Welcome to Module 1 of the Workpaper Management Training Program. This module will cover the basics of project maintenance, including creating a new project, work item maintenance, working with attachments, and working with project notes. This session is designed for end users and is designed to be watched in conjunction with the Module 1 workpapers. Workpaper management is a project management tool designed to assist clients in creating a standardized set of working papers for compliance and non-compliance jobs alike. The project management console actually exists within the client console in Central, and that's where we're going to start off. We're going to start off in the client band. Now, projects can be created in one of three levels in Central Console: the client, matter, and XPA ledger band. If I select projects under the client band, I will be able to see all projects that have been created for my client. These projects may be linked to a matter, to an XPA ledger, or neither. The reason for this is to not limit clients to creating compliance templates only. We may choose, for example, to create a project at the client level for an onboarding process. Similarly, we may choose to create a project at the matter level for a consulting or tax return only job, and at an XPA level for a set of financial accounts. For the purposes of this demonstration, we will be operating within the XPA ledger band. Regardless of the band we are working in, the Project Manager console remains the same. What we can see on our screen is that our Project Manager console is split up into 4 work areas. The first area, here on the left-hand side, is my project list. This shows the available projects in the current context. So, I am in my XPA ledger band, and in my top right corner, you can see the XPA ledger that my project is linked to. The project list then shows me all the projects that are attached to this particular XPA ledger. Directly below that, we have the project details. Details in here include the project ID, a unique identifier for each workpaper project, the overall status of the project, the year, title, and the template created. We also have the partner, preparer, and reviewer for this job. Many of these fields are not mandatory, however they are incredibly useful from a reporting perspective, and so we always recommend that we fill these out. To the right, and the largest part of our project screen, is the work area. The work area consists of a series of work items. These are the rows that you can see. Each work item is a task or a work paper that we will need to complete in order to complete the project. Throughout this session, you will hear me referring to work items, and the work item is each individual row. The work items contain different levels of detail. This is the detail that we have in our columns. The first column you can see is the item column. This contains the description of the work item. This may be a checklist question, the name of a work paper, or purely a heading. The next column over is our notes column. Whenever we have a note attached to a particular work item, we'll be able to see a small icon in this column that will alert us that a note is available to be reviewed. The next column over is the reference column. This is what drives the XPA integration with Workpaper management. The numbers that you can see in this column are the XPA account codes linked to each work item. What we will see later on is that the color codes that you can see on this screen will be replicated on our XPA ledger in a traffic light system, and this integration is driven through the reference column. Next to the reference column, we have our link column. This gives us any hyperlinks to the project documents. We then have our milestone column. The milestone column is only relevant when our project is linked to a matter, either directly or via an XPA ledger. Whenever you see an icon in the milestone column, it means that completion of this step will tick off the relevant milestone in workflow. We then have our status column. The status column tells us the status of each of the work items in the project. What is immediately obvious is the color coding of these statuses, and this is in place so that staff and preparers can see exactly where a project is up to and what actions they need to take. These color codes, as mentioned before, are also duplicated in our XPA trial balances when they are linked to Central Console. Next to our status column are our preparer and reviewer columns. These columns act as sign-off columns so that staff can put in their own name as preparers or as reviewers. The final portion of our Workpaper management screen is the notes area down the bottom right. As mentioned previously, we can attach notes to each individual work item, and when a work item that is selected has a note attached to it, that note or notes will be available in this view. We will expand on the notes capability later on in this video. So now that we've seen what the Workpaper management area looks like, how do we actually go about creating a project? Firstly, we need to make sure we are in the relevant band in Central Console. So, if we are creating a client level project, onboarding something similar, we are going to be in the client band. If we are creating a project for a consulting job, or a tax return only job, or any other job that is not linked to XPA, we will be creating the project in the matter band. For the purposes of this demonstration, we are going to be creating our project in the XPA ledger band. In the event that we do want our statuses to be available in the XPA trial balance, to have that traffic light reporting available, we want to be creating jobs in our XPA ledger band. In fact, unless you are specifically looking to create an onboarding type project, we recommend that you always create a project in either the XPA or the matter bands. In some instances, your administrator may have even restricted access to the client band from a project's perspective in order to prevent this happening. So to create my project, I'm going to make sure that I'm in the correct XPA ledger. So for this purpose, we need to have ensured that our XPA ledger is attached to our client in Central Console. If you're unsure how to do this, it is covered in other sections for both the tax program and the XPA program. We are making sure that our XPA ledger selected is the correct one, and I'm going to hit the Add button in the project area. You will get this dialog box coming up with our mandatory fields, which have an asterisk next to them, and our non-mandatory fields. As I mentioned earlier, although most of these fields are not mandatory, we do recommend that you fill them out, mainly from a reporting perspective. So firstly, I'm going to select the correct year. Then I'm going to give my project a title. This can be whatever you want, however we do recommend a consistent approach to make reporting a little bit easier. I also then need to choose the template that will create my project. Now, a template has a set of standard work items and also work papers attached to it. So I'm going to choose my year-end compliance template. I'm then also going to select a partner, preparer, and reviewer. You may also have project teams enabled. Project teams gives us the ability to restrict access to particular statuses based on a user's level. So, the way that we selected our preparer, reviewer, and partner, we are able to select our preparer, reviewer, and stakeholder in the project as well. In this screen, I also need to choose whether my users have the ability to add, edit, or delete work items. And I also need to decide whether my users have the ability to access the project if they're not a part of this team. We have some rights here. We can choose that non-team members have either no access to the project at all. They may also have access to the project, but not the documents, or they may be able to access the documents in read-only mode. The other box you can see here is a selection as to what happens with documents that have no status. So it is possible to have work items with no status at all, and we have an option there to say that those documents are either editable or read-only as a default. Once I have selected my project team, I hit accept and my project will get created. So now we can see that my project has been created and I have a list of work items and all my statuses are set to either not started or inactive. This is the base point for our project. So now that I have my project, well, what is it that I need to do? As a preparer, I need to work through these work items and answer the questions or complete the relevant work papers. In the event, now I'm going to pick a work item here that says request client information. So what that's asking me is, have I requested that information? I'm going to select that work item. I'm going to mark that as being done. You can see that the done status has been applied and the color code has gone. As I complete the tasks, I can mark off the statuses accordingly. Moving down the line, I do also need to prepare some work papers. For example, a bank rec. What I'm going to do there is I'm going to select my bank rec. I'm going to mark that work paper as being in progress. And I'm going to open up that work paper file. So, in the process of creating my project, a series of steps has been created and a template work paper has also been created and filed against my client. So the first thing that happens from a client perspective is a set of work papers is ready to go. These work papers have been sourced from the template library, and so we know that our work paper is the most up-to-date version. What we can also see is that Excel has opened up the work paper to the tab that I was selecting. So I selected my bank rec and I was taken to the bank rec tab. What we can do in our template stage is decide which tab will be opened by each work item. From a reviewer's standpoint, this is especially useful, as clicking on a work item will take you directly to the relevant tab and you can review it quicker and easier. From a preparer's perspective, especially from a new accountant's perspective, we know exactly which work paper we need to edit. Once I've prepared the work paper, I could close it down, save my changes, and mark the workpaper as being prepared. As a preparer, my aim is to get all of my tasks marked as prepared, or whatever your project equivalent is, so that my reviewer knows that the job is ready to review. But what if I want to link my own documents? Well, that's possible as well. Say that I want to add some client source documents. Say I have a source document to go against my bank rec. I can right click on my bank rec and select Create New Work Item. I can give that a name, an XPA reference if need be. What I'm seeing here is my XPA ledger for this project. And I can choose my attachment. I then have a roll method to choose. A roll method is an indicator as to what's going to happen to this work item when I roll the file over. And I have some options here. The default is item only. What that means is that next year, a placeholder, so the client source docs placeholder, will be in this project, but with no attached work items. Basically, I need to ask for this file again next year. If I choose the project rollover, it will file save as the work item as well as the attachment. So I get exactly what I had this year. If this attachment is a one-time only, say it relates to the specific sale of an asset, I can choose to exclude this work item from the rollover process. Basically, I only need it now, don't give it to me next year. The final option there is permanent, which means that this file will be referenced next year, but I don't need another copy of it. So project will give me a second copy. Permanent will link to the original file. Typical candidates for the permanent rollover option are trust deeds. I can then hit create. Now, the source document that I chose was an Excel file, and it had multiple tabs. So, what I need to do is I need to select whether I want Workpaper Management to open up a specific tab. And there we go. So what we can see there is how to create an additional work item, but also how to attach a document to that work item. I don't need to create a new one. I can just attach a file. But what you must note is that each work item can only have one working paper file attached to it. So for example, for my bank, I needed to have a second work item because I have a work paper as well as a source document. Each line item can only have one document attached to it. However, we can attach the same document to multiple line items. Now, not all work items are going to progress as smoothly as this. I may need to ask a query, and I need to let my reviewer know what that query is. So, making sure that I have the work item selected, I'm going to go down to the Notes section of my project, right-click, and start a new thread. I then add some detail. And I can also say where the note is at from a status perspective. As a reviewer, I can also mark an item as needing review. Again, I can use my notes to make it nice and clear what needs to be done. Again, when I click off, you can see my note. I can also choose to mark things as being prepared or reviewed by a particular user. Once a project has been completed, we want to make sure that we update the top line status to either being WIP complete, reviewed, or closed and locked. What this will enable us to do is track the status of the project from an overall perspective, which is covered in Module 4, being reports. The end result is something like this. This is a job that is just about completed, with some items being reviewed, some being ready for review, and the job being able to be tracked effectively. Now, having reviewed both the reading material and this video, here are some quick questions to test your knowledge. This concludes Module 1 of the Workpaper Management Training. Please proceed to Module 2.